day, everyone. I am Angel Blasti Arcamo.
I am Joanna Di Florendo,
And we are going to discuss the chapter 10, which is the death and dying. We have now reached the end of the lifespan. While it is true that death occurs more commonly at the later stages of age, death can occur at any point in the life cycle. So as we all know, ang kamatayon dili jud nato siya mapungan. Mo-occur jud siya anytime, anywhere. So kay hinulman naman natong kinabuhi, pwede siya mabawi kung kano sa gusto or kung asa man dapita, babawi jud na siya. So ang common jud nga inig mamatay ka kay kanang tigulang na ka or kanang pinaka-common din ng kanang tigulang na ka, but napoy mga mamatay nga tungod sa mga sakit, mga trangkaso kanang maaksidente pud siya. Death is a deeply personal experience evoking many different reactions, emotions, and perceptions. Children and young adults in their prime of life may perceive death differently from adults dealing with chronic illness or the increasing frequency of the death of family and friends. So, ang mga children o young adults, dahil na jud sila og kanang think bitaw about sa death kaysa sa adults. Kaya ang adults, kabalo na kayo kung unsa ang definition sa death, while the children, kay wala pa sila kanang mga idea. If asked, most people envision their death as quick and peaceful. So ang ubang tao kay na ilan nang nakuan ba na forecast na nila ang death nga dali ra daw kayo tas inig mamatay sila, peaceful na daw kay nanog daw sa langit. So, however, except for a handful illnesses in which death does often quickly follow diagnosis, or in the case of accidents or trauma, most death conditions have led to a rise in the life expectancy around the world. Death will still be the inevitable final chapter of our life. So, ang death kay undefeated dyan na siya, then dili dyan na siya mapungan mo, gitawag ang death nga inevitable. So, in this chapter, we have a learning objectives. So, after going through this lesson, the learner shall be able to define death, describe what characterize physical and social death, compare the leading causes of death in the world with those in the United States, review the current statistic on suicide and fatal drug overdoses, define deaths of despair, explain where people die, describe how attitudes about death and death anxiety change as people age, explain the philosophy and practice of palliative care, describe the role of hospice and family caregivers, explain the different types of advance directives, describe the cultural differences in end-of-life decision, explain the different types of euthanasia and their controversies, describe funeral rituals in different religions, describe the new practice of green burials, differentiate among grief, bereavement, and mourning, describe the stages of loss based on Kubler-Ross model and describe the criticism of the model, explain the dual process model of grief, identify the impact of losing a child and parent, identify the four tasks of mourning, and lastly, explain the importance of support groups for those in grief. So the first objectives here in our lesson is to define death. So how do you define death? So what is the definition of death? One way to understand death and dying is to look more closely at what defines physical death and social death. According to the Uniform Determination of Death Act or UDDA, Uniform Law Commissioners 1980, death is defined clinically as the following. An individual who has sustained irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions or irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain, including the brainstem, is dead. A determination of death must be made in accordance with accepted medical standards. This act has since been adopted by most states and provides a comprehensive and medically factual basis for determining death in all situations. Death process. For those individuals who are terminal and death is expected, a series of physical changes occur. According to Bell 2010, identifies some of the major changes that occur in the weeks, days, and hours leading up to that. So here are the some major changes that occur in the weeks before passing. Number 1, minimal appetite. Prefer easily digested foods. So pag weeks before passing na lang ka, mag-prefer na lang kag easily digested foods. So what do you mean by that? Kanang dali ra mahilis nga mga pagkaon kay weeks before passing na hapit ka mamatay, di ba? So number 2, increase in the need for sleep. So kailangan na jud nga matulog jud ka kanang dili ka magbilar-bilar. I-increase nimo ang imong katulog ba. So number 3, increase weakness. So magka-increase imong pagluya-luya. Weak na kay ka kay weeks before passing maning major changes. Number 4, incontinence of bladder and or bowel. Number 5, restlessness or disorientation. Number 6, increased need for assistance with care. So kay weeks before passing naman nangihanglan na jud kag tabang ana, ninghan kag tabang nga magpakaon nimo, magpailis, katong samkuan nga buhaton nga di nimo buhat kay luya na kay kapit na ka mamatay. So, here are the major changes that occur in the days before passing. So, kanina, weeks before passing, and now, days before passing na lang. So, number 1, decreased level of consciousness. So, na-conscious na ka. Kabalo, you know what is conscious, right? So, number 2, pauses in breathing. So, magliso na ginhawa. Maginhawa, kaya na lang guys, i-demo na pa. Ano na lang, maginhawa ka na marag, nanay taning mong kinabuhi ba? Then, number 3, decreased blood pressure. So, di ba, pag mahay imong blood pressure, high blood. So, kani, mo decrease kay, hapit na ka, mamatay, days na lang. And also, decrease urine volume and urine color darkens. So, kamay na lang kay imong ihi. Tas imong ihi, mag-dark, mura kag UTI. And murmuring to people others cannot see. So, mura kag giango-ango ani. Next, reaching in air or picking at covers. Next, need for assistance with all care. So, kailangan na jud kay kag 100% nga tabang nga mag-ilo sa imuha, magpailis, magpakaon, magpatindog kay days before passing naman. So, it means nga luya na jud kay ka sa tanan. Mura na kag mamatay na jud ka. Mura wa na kay pag-asa ba. So, next, so, here are the major changes sa days to hours before passing. So, kanina, ang first na to gitackle kay weeks before passing, next, days before passing, then, kay days to hours before passing. Naana lang kay 24 hours, so equivalent to 1 day. Or, hours na lang jud nga mamatay ka. So, number 1, decreased level of consciousness or comatose-like states. So, naay possibility nga, makoma ka, mapatay imong lawas. So, di ba, oxygen na lang ka. So, oxygen na lang magdala nimo ana. Number 2, inability to swallow. So, maglisod ka og tulon og mga foods, drinks. Number 3, pauses and breathing become longer. So, mag-ano na siya, guys. Parang naghihingalo na sa, kamatayon. And shallow breaths. And weak or absent pulse. So, maglisod na kay pangitaon nimong pulso kay hapit na jud ka mamatay. And knees, feet, and or hands becoming cool or cold. So, mamugno na imong kamot, imong tiil, tas mamugno na siya. Next, knees, feet, and or hand is coloring to purplish hue. So, manglagom na imuang mga kamot, tiil, kay hapit naman ka mamatay. So, noisy breathing due to relaxed throat muscles, often called a death rattle. So, imong ginhawa, saba na kayo, di ba? Ang normal breathing, kaya na naman. Pero, og kuan na lang gali, days and hours na before ka mo pass, ana ni mo ginhawa. Mura na jud kanang kamatino ba, kumbaga naghihingalo. So, lastly, skin coloring becoming pale, waxen. So, kung ganiha, manglagom, so, ang last diri kay mang putla. So, next objectives is to describe what characterizes physical and social death. Social death begins much earlier than physical death, according to Pattison, 1977. Social death occurs when others begin to dehumanize and withdraw from someone who is terminally ill or has been diagnosed with a terminal illness, according to Glaser and Strauss 1966. Dehumanization includes ignoring them, talking about them if they were not present, making decisions without consulting them first, and forcing unwanted procedures. Sweeting and Gilhooly 1997. According to Sweeting and Gilhooly 1997, further identified older people in general and people with a loss of personhood as having the characteristics necessary to be treated as socially dead. More recently, the concept has been used to describe the exclusion of people with HIV or AIDS, younger people living with terminal illness, and the preference to die at home according to Brunelli 2011. So, naakoy kuandiri definition sa social death and physical death. So, what is social death? According to APA Dictionary of Psychology, social death occurs in situations in which verbal and nonverbal communication would be expected to include all participants, but in which one or more individuals are excluded. So here are the examples of social death: racial and gender exclusion, persecution, slavery, and apartheid. So what is physical death, meaning in psychology? By a general definition, physical death can be said to include physiological and biological death. So our next objective here is compare the leading causes of death in the world with those in the United States. Most common causes of death in the world. The most recent statistics analyzed by the World Health Organization, or WHO, were in 2016 and 2018, and non-communicable deaths, that is, those not passed from person to person, were responsible for the majority of deaths, as you can see sa figure 10.12. So the three most common non-communicable diseases were heart disease, stroke, and COPD. Tobacco use is attributed as one of the top killers and is often the hidden cause behind many of diseases that result in death, such as heart disease and chronic lung disease. So as we all know, di ba ang tabako kay sigarilyo, smoke. So kabalo naman siya nga ang makaapekto dyan na sa heart o lungs nato kay ang aso. So mao dyan na siya ang top killers karon nga causes pod sa number 1 cause pod siya sa kamatayon. In the United States, in 1900, the most common causes of death were infectious diseases, which brought death quickly. Today, the most common causes of death are chronic diseases in which a slow and steady decline in health ultimately results in death. In 2016, heart disease, cancer, and accidents were leading causes of death. You can see it in the figure 10.3, the Advisory Board of 2018. The causes of death vary by age. You can see it sa figure 10.4 and figure 10.5. Prior to age 1, SIDS, congenital problems, and other birth complications are the largest contributors to infant mortality. Accidents, known as unintentional injury, become the leading cause of death throughout childhood into middle adulthood. In later middle adulthood and late adulthood, heart disease, cancer, and other medical conditions become the leading killers. Our next objective is to review the current statistics on suicide and fatal drug overdoses. Suicide. According to the latest research from CDC, Hedegaard, Cortin, and Warner 2018, the suicide rate increased 33% from 1999 through 2017. In the United States, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death overall, but it ranks as the second leading cause of death for those 10 to 34 and the fourth leading cause for those aged 35 to 54 according to WARE 2019. Overall, approximately 45,000 people died by suicide in 2016 according to CDC 2018. Suicide rates have risen for all racial and ethnic groups and increased in every state except for Nevada, which was already high. Further, the suicide rate for the most rural countries, 20.0 per 100,000, is higher than the most urban countries, which is 11.1 per 100,000, according to Hedegaard et al. 2018. So our next objectives in this lesson is to define the death of despair. What is death of despair? While the suicide rate has increased in America, during the same period it has gone down in other countries, including Canada, Japan, China, Russia, United Kingdom, Germany, and most of Western Europe. Globally, suicide rates have fallen when the living conditions have improved according to WEIR 2019. Not surprisingly, the opposite is true, and thus a decrease in economic and social well-being, referred to as death of despair, has been linked to suicides in America according to the CDC 2018. Other factors that contributed to suicide among those with and without mental health conditions included relationship problems, substance use disorders, financial or legal problems, and health concerns. So, ang death of despair kanang murag desperado na ka mamatay. So, death of despair is a kind of suicide also. So, makita ninyo siya sa figure 10.9. So, ang suicide guys, naabot siya ay prevention. How to prevent suicide? So, prevention. Globally, limiting access to lethal means has been contributed to a decrease in suicide according to WEIR 2019. Equally as important are prevention programs and improving access to mental health treatment, especially in the workplace. Many occupations have seen increase in suicide rates, and consequently, specific programs are being designed to address the stressors associated with these jobs. Knowing the warning signs of suicide and encouraging someone to get treatment are things that everyone can do to address the increase in the suicide rate. So, makita ninyo sa figure 10.10 ang mga warning signs of suicide, and kung makakabalo na mo sa warning signs, so you know how to prevent suicide. Fatal drug overdoses. Another factor linked to the deaths of despair has been fatal drug overdoses. So, ang fatal drug overdoses is one of the reason nga na mag-suicide kay mag-overdose sa drugs. In 2017, deaths from fatal drug overdoses in the United States equaled 70,237 according to Hedegaard, Meningnew, and Warner 2018. The rate of drug overdose death has been steadily increasing since 1999, and in 2007, the rate is 21.7 per 100,000, was 9.6 higher than the rate in 2016, which is 19.8 per 100,000. So you can see it sa figure 10.11. Unlike suicide rates, deaths from overdose occur equally among those living in urban and rural areas. The rate of drug overdoses deaths involving synthetic opioids other than methadone drugs. So kaning mga fentanyl analogs, and tramadol guys, kay mao ni ang mga different kind of drugs nga ilang ginag-take nga mag-overdose sila maong mamatay sila. So, nag-increase siya by 45% between 2016 and 2017, from 6.2 to 9.0 per 100,000. So, makita na siya sa figure 10.12. Fentanyl is an especially powerful opioid that can easily lead to fatal overdose. So, kaning fentanyl nga drugs, mauni siya ang pinaka-powerful nga drugs nga dali ra jud ka ma-overdose, unlike sa fentanyl analogs and tramadol. Because it is synthetic, it is cheap to make and easier to conceal than heroin. So, dali ra siya himuon, then dali ra pud siya ma-conceal, unlike sa heroin nga drugs. So our next objective is to discuss where do people die. Gathering statistics on the location of death is not a simple matter. Those with terminal illnesses may be going through the process of dying at home or in nursing home, only to be transported to a hospital in the final hours of their life. According to the Stanford Medical School 2019, most American, 80% of Americans would prefer to die at home. However, 60% of Americans die in acute care hospitals, and 20% in nursing homes, and 20% at home, in total of 100%. While dying at home is not favored in certain cultures, and some patients may prefer to die in a hospital, the results indicate the less people are dying at home than want to. Internationally, 54% of deaths in over 45 nations occurred in hospitals, with the most frequent occurring in Japan, 78%, and the least frequent occurring in China, 20%, according to a study by Broad et al. 2013. They also found that for older adults, 18% of deaths occurred in some form of residential care, such as nursing homes, and for that each decade after age 65, the rate of dying in such settings increased 10%. In addition, the number of women dying in residential care was considerably higher than for males. So our next objective is to describe how attitudes about death and death anxiety change as people age. Developmental perceptions of death and death anxiety. The concept of death changes as we develop from early childhood to late adulthood. Cognitive development, societal beliefs, familial responsibilities, and personal experiences all shape an individual's view of death according to Batts 2004, Erber and Zuckman 2015, National Cancer Institute 2013. So, infancy, this is the first stage of our life. Certainly, infants do not comprehend death. However, they do react to the separation caused by death. Infants separated from their mothers may become sluggish and quiet, no longer smile or coo sleepless, and develop physical symptoms such as weight loss. So, ang mga infants, wala pa na sila ka-idea about death. So, early childhood. As you recall from Piaget's pre-operational stage of cognitive development, young children experience difficulty distinguishing reality from fantasy. It is therefore not surprising that young children lack understanding of death. So, ang infant o ang early childhood kay murag the same ra sila nga wala pa sila wala pa sila more idea or more knowledge about that kay mga wala pa sila kamuwang-muwang mga bata pa. So, middle childhood. Although children in middle childhood begin to understand the finality of death, up until the age of 9, they may still participate in magical thinking and believe that though their thoughts they can bring someone back to life. They also may think that they could have prevented the death in some way, and consequently feel guilty and responsible for death. So during a stage na sila gamay nga idea about that, but naaragya po sila yung mga bataot nga panghunahuna nga abi nila mag-wish sila nga mabalik ang someone's life nga dili mo na mabalik basta mamatay na, so nag-magical thinking sila. So, late childhood. At this stage, children understand the finality of death and know that everyone will die, including themselves. So, mature na na sila more knowledge about death. Kaya, i-consider nila nga tanan ta mamatay including sa ilaang kaugalingon. Adolescents. Adolescents understand death as well as adults. With formal operational thinking, adolescents can now think abstractly about death, philosophize about it, and ponder their own lack of existence. Some adolescents become fascinated with that and reflect on their own funeral by fantasizing on how others will react and feel. So kaning adolescents na jud sila pangutok kung unsa jud ang kamatayon, and nag-isip na pud sila nga what if mamatay sila, das unsay ma-feel sa ilang gibinilan, ilang gikamatyan, I mean sa ilang pamilya unsay i-react nga nagtan-aw sa iyang kabaong, sa iyang funeral, unsay i-react, unsay ma-feel. So ilang gi-fantasize. So, early adulthood. In adulthood, there are differences in the level of fear and anxiety concerning that experience by those in different age groups. For those in early adulthood, their overall lower rate of death is a significant factor in their lower rates of death, anxiety. Individuals in early adulthood typically expect a long life ahead of them, and consequently do not think about nor worry about death. So diri sa early adulthood, wala na sila na worry sa death kay kabalo man jud sila nga mamatay man jud ang tawo. So middle adulthood. Those in middle adulthood report more fear of death than those in either. So kaning nasa middle adulthood montong nay kahadlok jud sa kamatayon. So early and late adulthood. The caretaking responsibilities for those in middle adulthood is a significant factor in their fears. As mentioned previously, middle adults often provide assistance for both their children and parents, and they feel anxiety about leaving them to care for themselves. So, nag-worry na sila kay what if mamatay na sila, kung nag-worry sila kung kisay mo take care sa ilaang kuan parents, sa ilang ikabilingan, kung mamatay na sila, nag-worry na sila. Late adulthood. Contrary to the belief that because they are so close to death, they must fear death, those in late adulthood have lower fears of death than other adults. Why would this occur? First, older adults have fewer caregiving responsibilities and are not worried about leaving family members on their own. They also had more time to complete activities they have planned in their lives, and they realize that the future will not provide as many opportunities for them. Additionally, they have less anxiety because they have already experienced the death of loved ones and have become accustomed to the likelihood of death. It is not death itself that concerns those in the late adulthood. Rather, it is having control over how to die. Curative, palliative, and hospice care. When individuals become ill, they need to make choices about the treatment they wish to receive. One's age, type of illness, and personal beliefs about dying affect the type of treatment chosen, according to Bell 2010. Curative care is designed to overcome and cure disease and illness, according to Fox 1997. Its aim is to promote complete recovery, not just to reduce symptoms or pain. An example of curative care would be chemotherapy. So, dapat sa curative care nga dili lang kay mawala ang mga symptoms o kanang sakit, dapat maulian jud ka complete recovery. So, ang example ani kay chemotherapy. Palliative care focuses on providing comfort and relief from physical and emotional pain to patients throughout their illness, even while being treated according to NIH 2007. In the past, palliative care was confined to offering comfort for the dying. Now it is offered whenever patients suffer from chronic illnesses such as cancer or heart disease, according to IOM 2015. Palliative care is also part of hospice program. So ang palliative care kay more siya mga counseling nga kanang maghatag sila comfort and relief sa mga naay illness. Hospice emerged in the United Kingdom in the mid-20th century as a result of work of Cicely Saunders. This approach became popularized in the US by the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, according to IOM 2015. And by 2012, there were 5,500 hospice programs in the US, or National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, or NHPCO 2013. Hospice care, whether at home, in a hospital, nursing home, or hospice facility, involves a team of professionals and volunteers who provide terminally ill patients with medical, psychological, and spiritual support, along with support with their families, according to Shannon 2006. The aim of hospice is to help the dying be as free from pain as possible and to comfort both the patients and their families during a difficult time. So, mura siyang mag-counseling sa both patients and parents. In order to enter hospice, a patient must be diagnosed as terminally ill with an anticipated death within 6 months according to IOM 2015. The patient is allowed to go through the dying process without invasive treatments rather. Hospice workers try to inform the family of what to expect and reassure them that much as what they see is normal part of the dying process. According to the National Hospice Palliative Care Organization 2019, there are 4 types of hospice care in America. Number 1, routine hospice care, where the patient has chosen to receive hospice care at home, is the most common form of hospice. Number 2, continuous home care is predominantly nursing care with caregiver and hospice aides supplementing this care to manage pain and acute symptom crisis for 8 to 24 hours in the home. Number 3, inpatient respite care is provided by a hospital, hospice, or long-term care facility to provide temporary relief for family caregivers. Lastly, general inpatient care is provided by a hospital, hospice, or long-term care facility when pain and acute symptom management can be handled in other settings. According to Shannon 2006, the basic elements of hospice include care of patient and family as a single unit, pain and symptom management for patients, having access to day and night care, coordination of all medical services, social work, counseling and pastoral services, lastly, bereavement counseling for the family up to 1 year after patient's death. So our next objective is to describe the roles of hospice and family caregivers. So na-describe na nato ang roles sa hospice a while ago, and the next is the family caregivers. According to the Institute of Medicine 2015, it is estimated that 60 million Americans, or 29% of adult population, are caregivers for someone who is dying or chronically ill. 2/3 of these caregivers are women. This care takes its toll physically, emotionally, and financially. Family caregivers may face the physical challenges of lifting, dressing, feeding, bathing, and transporting a dying or ill family member. They may worry about whether they are performing all tasks safely and properly, as caregiving tasks may also interfere with their ability to take care of themselves and meet other family and workplace obligations financially. Families may face high out-of-pocket expenses according to IOM 2015. As can be seen in Table 10.16, most family caregivers are providing care by themselves with little professional interventions, are employed, and have provided care for more than 3 years. The annual loss of productivity in the U.S. was $25 billion in 2013 as a result of work absenteeism due to providing this care. As the prevalence of chronic disease rises, the need for family caregivers is growing. Unfortunately, the number of potential family caregivers is declining as the large baby boomer generations enters into late adulthood, according to Redfoot, Finberg, and Hauser 2013. So our next objective is explain the different types of advanced directives. Advanced directives. Advanced care planning refers to all documents that pertain to end-life care. This includes advanced directives and medical orders. Advanced directives include and living wills. These are initiated by the patient. Living wills are written or video statements that outline the health care initiates the person's wishes under certain circumstances. Durable power of attorney for health care names the person who should make health care decisions in that event and that patient is incapacitated. In contrast, medical orders are crafted by a medical professional on behalf of a seriously ill patient. Unlike advance directives, as these are doctor's orders, they must be followed by other medical personnel. Medical orders include cessation orders of life for life-sustaining treatment or POLST, do not resuscitate, do not incubate, or do not hospitalize. In some instances, medical orders may be limited for the facility in which they were written. Several states have endorsed POLST so that they are applicable across the healthcare settings or IOM, despite the fact that many Americans worry about the financial burden of end-of-life care. More than one quarter of all adults, including those aged 75 and older, have given little or no thought to their end-of-life wishes, and even fewer have captured those wishes in writing or through conversation, according to IOM 2015.
So, I'm going to describe the cultural differences in end-of-life decision. So, cultural differences in the end-of-life decision is cultural factors strongly influence how doctors and other healthcare providers and family members communicate bad news to patients. The expectation regarding who makes the healthcare decision and attitudes about end-of-life care, Gans 2019, Seawright and Gafford 2005. So, kani siya is gina-influence jud sa doktor kung paano sa doktor, sa family members, o sa healthcare providers kung paano sa nila i-communicate sa patients ang bad news. Like, for example, nanay-tani mo life, na lang kay 6 months or 50-50 na ka, so wala na kay chance maulian or kung ano lang ang gagunit sa mga tubo na lang sa ilalom, di ba? So, ginakuan jud ni sila, gina-influence jud paon sa nila i-deliver ang ang message sa patients. So dapat ato expectation na jud about ana is kanang ang attitude ug ang behavior sa patients pag-abot sa end of life decision or end of life care. So, in Western medicine, doctors take the approach that the patient should be told the truth about their health. So, kaning health Western medicine is kanang sa United States. So, ginaingon jud nila ang tinuod sa patients, wala jud sila ginatago. Gina-direct jud nila ingon sa patients unsa ang tinuod or gina-approach jud nila para ma-told ang truth about their health. So, Black 2011 reports that 75% of the world population do not conduct medicine by the same standard. Thus, other Western nation and even among certain racial and ethnic groups within those nations, doctors and family members may conceal the full nature of terminal illness or illness rather as revealing such information is a view as potential harmful to the patient. So, sa United States or sa Western nation is outside ana or even among sa Western nation, gina-keep nila or ginatago nila sa patients unsa ang real situation ani or unsa ang health condition. Ginatago nila sa patient. Okay, kung i-reveal siya, harmful siya sa patients. Like for example, ignan siya na kanang kining nana lang kay 1 month gikan karon. Ligmahuman ang 1 month possible mamatay ka. So, for example, kung sa ako lang niya kung ako. So, kung 1 month, kung mamatay ko 1 month, di ba? Like, nganong abtun pa man anak nga days ka mamatay raman gyapon ko. Pwede naman ko mamatay karon. So, harmful jud siya sa patients kay unsa-unsa na lang ilang ginahuna-una since nanay taning or nanay limit kung unsa na lang silang adlaw mabuhi. So dili jud siya pwede iingon sa kuan ra pod. Since lahi mag mga culture ang kuan pag unsa ang naa sila mga differences pa unsa end of life ang kuan end of life decision. So Kattopadhyay and Simon 2008 reported that in India, doctors routinely abide by the family's wishes and withhold information from the patient. So, lahi pod ang kuan cultural sa India, no? Lahi pod ilaha. So, ginatuman jud nila ang family wishes dito sa Indian, unsa ingon, or kanang ginakuan pod nila ang information sa patients. Like, for example, pag ingon ko, ayo iingon sa iya nga inana ha, or something dili jud pod siya, bali ginatago jud siya ba pod gihapon. Pero ginatupad jud sa mga kuan sa doctors ang family kuan kanang family decisions. Then sa Germany sad lahi sad ilahang cultural. So lahi pod ang doctors sa Germany. While in Germany, the doctors are legally required to inform the patients. So, pareha siya sa kuan Western medicine like sa United States. Sa Germany pod, gina-inform jud ang patients. Germany doctors are legally required to inform the patients. In addition, many doctors in Japan and sa African nation use terms such as mass growth and unclean tissue. So, sa Japan ug African, ginaingon gihapon ang tinuod, pero lahi ilang ginayus nga term. So, ilang ginayus na term is mass, growth, and unclean tissue. Kung naga-refer sila sa cancer, kung ginadiscuss nila sa patients, rather than referring to cancer when discussing the illness to the patient and their families. According to Holland, Gary, Machini, and Truss, 1987. So, family members also actively protect terminally ill patients from knowing about their illness in many Hispanic, Chinese, and Pakistan cultures. So, lahi pud ang sa Hispanic, Chinese, and Pakistan. Lahi lang culture. So, diri siya, ang family members is gina-actively protect jud nila ang kanabitang ilang patients nga masakiton or kamatyon na gina sa mahibalan nila ang ilahang sakit by Kaufrit and 1997, Herdon and Joyce 2004. So in this Western medicine, we view the patient as autonomous in healthcare decision by according to Kattopadhyay and Simon 2008 and Seawright and Gofford 2005. However, in the other nation, the family or community plays the main role. So lahi pud ni siya. So lahi pud ni siya nga nation. Sa lahi nga nation, ang kanang naadyoy big role dito is ang family ug ang community. So which means or kaning wala dili jud magdesisyon ang patients kay ang magdesisyon jud kay ang family ug ang community. So, or the decision are made primarily by medical professional or the doctors in concert with the family make decision for the patients. So, pwede po mag-desisyon ang medical professionals. So, kung unsa ang decision sa community or the doctors, mo ilang tumanon. So, kung naman ganing decision ang patients, wala na to siya. Dili to siya valid. Kay dili siya ang valid ra nga magdesisyon isang family o ang community. So, for instance, in comparison to European Americans and African Americans, Korean and Mexican Americans are more likely to view family members as the decisions makers rather than just the patients by Berger 1998, Seawright and Gofford 2005. So, in many Asian cultures, illness is viewed as a family event, not just something that impacts the individual patients. So, sa Asian cultures, dili sa tuwa, ang Asian di ba bilong ang Philippines sa Asian. So, dili lang pud ang patient ang maapektuhan. For example, na ako'y sakit so dili lang pod ako ang na-impact kung ako rin naisakit. So maapil pud kagol ako ang family members, di ba? So ginatawag na siya family event, not just the impacts the individual patients. So kung naisakit imo ang kapamilya, ikaw maimpakan pud ka or maapektuhan sad ka kung naisakit imuhang kapamilya. Diri sa ato sa Asian cultures. So, Black 2011, Candid 2002, Katupatay, and Simon 2008. Thus, there is an expectations that the family has a say in the healthcare decisions. So, as many cultures attribute high regard and respect for doctors, patients, and family may differ some of the end-of-life decision making to medical professionals. So, kita nga mga cultures, di ba? Dako jud pud ta kayo respeto sa doctors, patients, and family. Kay kung unsa man ato ang decision is mo jud pud ilahang ginatuman sa mga medical professionals. So, the notion of advance directives hold little or no relevance in many cultures outside of Western society. Black 2011. For instance, in India, advance directives are virtually non-exist, while in Germany, they are regarded as a major part of healthcare. Katupadyay and Simon 2008. So moreover, end-of-life decision involve how much medical aid should be used. In the United States, Canada, and most European countries, artificial feeding is more commonly used. So, ang particularly ginayus dito is ang artificial feeding. Once a patient has stopped eating. While in many other nations, lack of eating is seen as a sign rather than a cause of dying and do not consider using a feeding tube. So, sa sa United States, Canada, and Europe is kanang pag nag-stop nag-eating ilang patients is nagagamit na lang sila artificial feeding. Like, for example, artificial feeding, kanang naa sila ginapakaon nga artificials. So, sa lain pong nations, once ang patients is dili na nagakaon, is sign na to siya nga, or cause na to siya nga, kanang kamatyunon, or hapit na jud mamatay. O dili na sila consider nga mag-use pa og feeding tube. So, dito sa kuan, kanang sa United States is nagagamit sila og feeding tube. Dito ginapa-agi ang pagkaon. So, according to a Pew Research Center survey, LIFCA 2004, as you can see at the figure 18. Go. So, second, explain the different types of euthanasia and their controversies. So, euthanasia. Euthanasia is defined as intentionally ending someone's life when suffering from terminal illness or severe disability. UDN 2016. So, ang euthanasia DI is intentionally jud nga ginaputol ang kinabuhi sa tawo. For example is kay para dili na mag-suffer. So, for example, naakay ka ng life support. So, kinanglan pod connect ra gyapon ni siya sa end of life decision, pero kani siya is intentionally ending of someone's life. So, labaw na ka nang masakiton na kay wala na jud pag-asa, ang nagagunit na lang sa iyang kinabuhi is ang life support or oxygen. So, kana ang uban na ginaputol na lang ang or ginatanggal na lang ang life support. Mo na siya ginatawag nato na euthanasia. So, euthanasia is further separated into active euthanasia, which is intentionally causing death. So, usually, though a lethal dose of medication, and passive euthanasia occurs when life-sustaining support is withdrawn. Mo din na ato, katong example gan na mo to siya ginatawag nga active euthanasia. Kanang ginaputol na ang life-sustaining support, gina-withdraw na. So, this can occur through the removal or a respiratory feeding tube or heart-lung machine. So, katubitaw na mga tit, katubitaw, di ba, pag makuan mo adto mo sa ICU ba na siya? Kanang, namoy makitaan nga, katong gi-connect sa kamot, di ba, nato siya, or naay gi-connect diri dapit, life support, or kanang ug naay tube ginataod mo to siya agianan sa artificial food mo to kung gidiscuss while ago, di ba? Mo to siya. Kung itanggal to siya, kung mo nang tigagunit sa kinabuhi sa patients, pag itanggal to siya, intentionally nga gitanggal to siya kay wala na jud, nakadesisyon na jud sila nga tanggalon na jud to siya, mo to siya ang ginatawag nga euthanasia, which is active euthanasia. So physician-assisted dying is a form of active euthanasia whereby a physician prescribes the names by which person can die. So, the United States Federal, so later on, I will show in the screen the table 10.2. 9 state and DC allow legal physician-assisted by dying. So, mano siya state and date pace. Later on, makita lang po ninyo siya, but still, I want to discuss muna. So, para next, makita na ninyo ang table. So, the United States federal government does not legislate physician-assisted dying as a law are handled at the state level. Procon Original 2018, 9 states and the District of Columbia. So, kaning DC nga akong ginaingon, kaning nasa table 10.2, 9 state, and ang kanang DC is minana is District of Columbia, District of Columbia na siya ang DC. Currently allow physician-assisted dying. So, the person seeking physician-assisted. So, ang tao nga pwede ra makakita o physician-assisted what if kamatyo no naka ang tao ra nga pwede mangita og mga physician nga mag-assist sa mga taong kamatyo nun is at least 18 years of age. At least 18 pataas, dili siya 17 pa ubos. Dili pa na siya pwede. Ang gina-require diri is 18 pataas, at least 18 years of age. At least naabot na siya 18 years old. So second, we have 6 or less months until expected death. So, kuan siya. For example, ginan ka sa doctor, 1 year na lang ang naaka. So, dili, kung 1 year pa, gikan karon hantod sa 1 year, so dili pa ka pwede mangita og kanang physician. So, pwede lang mangita is 6 or less months until expected death. So, for example, 3 months na lang ka na so pwede na ka mangita og physician or miskan 6 or miskan paubos pa ato kay less than man pwede na mangita og physician assisted. So number 3, we have obtained 2 oral or at least 15 days apart and 1 written request from physician. So pwede na ka mag-request, maghatag kag request sa physician, magkuan kag form like obtain 2 oral at least 15 days. From Physician Procon Original 2016. So, this is the table 10.2 lists the 9 states and DC that allows physician-assisted dying and the date the act was passed. Go. So, Canada and several European countries including Switzerland, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands also allow physician-assisted dying. So, kaning mga kaning Canada, European, Switzerland, Belgium, and etc. is gialaw sila nga pwede sila magkuan og physician. Kung kamatyo na to sila physician-assisted dying. So, as of 2014, Belgium is the only country that allows the right to die to those under the age of 18. So, ang Belgium ra jud ang ginaalaw nila nga pwede mamatay ka ng pwede na mamatay ang 17 paubos. Di ba? So, sa other country or nation, dili siya ginaalaw as of 2014. So, stricter conditions were put in a place for children including parental consent. The child must be suffering from a serious and curable disease. The child must understand what euthanasia means, and the child's death must be expected in the near future. Narayan 2016. So, kung ang bata is kanang serious jud ba, ug dili na jud matambalan iyang ihang sakit, so kinahanglan jud og parent consent. So ug dapat sabta na pud sa child unsa ang meaning sa euthanasia, kanang sa iyahang umaabot nga dapat maksabta na jud niya unsa nang euthanasia, kay intentionally man ni ang di ba akong gi-discuss gana intentionally kanang gina-end nila ang someone's life, di ba, ang euthanasia. So must be expected kung kamatyonon na. Dapat gina-expect na jud nato as a bata. For example, bata ko. So dapat masabta na nako kung ngano man na siya, ngano man inani, di ba? Sa akong maduduol na kamatayon. So, the practice of physician-assisted dying is currently controversial and with religious, legal, ethical, and medical expert, the main areas where there is disagreement between those who support physician-assisted dying and those who do not include. So first, we have whether a person has the legal right to die. Second, we have whether active euthanasia would come a slippery slope and start a trend legalized deaths for individuals who may be disabled or unable to give consent. So three, we have for physician to do no harm. Sorry. Number three, how to interpret the Hippocratic Oath and what exactly means. For physician to do not harm. Number four, we have whether the government should be involved in end-of-life decision. And number five, specific religious restrictions. Again, deliberately ending a life. According to Procon Original 2016. Not surprisingly, there are strong opinions on both sides of this topic. According to a 2013 Pew Researcher Center survey, 47% of Americans approve and 49 discover of laws that would allow a physician to prescribe lethal dose of drugs that terminally ill patients could use to commit suicide. Pew Researcher Center 2013. Attitudes of physician-assisted dying were roughly the same in 2005 when 46 approved and 45 disapproved. So, na-vote sila kay naay 46 approved and naapoy 45% disapproved. So, gamay ra jud kayo ang ilahang labaw. So, now I'm going to describe the funeral rituals in different religions. So, religious practices after death. So, funeral rites are expressions of loss that reflect personal and cultural beliefs about the meaning of death and the afterlife. So, kita nga lahi-lahi og religion, naadyo tay lahi-lahi nga mga funeral ceremonies or paunsa nato i-express ato ang kanang pagka dalumhati nato or di ba mga grief nato according sa ato ang cultural beliefs. So, ceremonies provides survivors or a sense of closure after a loss. These rites and ceremonies send the message that the death is real and allow friends and loved ones to express their love and duty to those who die. So, understand circumstances in which person has been lost and presumed dead, or when family members were able to attend a funeral. There can be continue to be a lack of closure that makes it difficult grieve and to learn to live with loss. Although many people are still in shock when they attend funerals. So nagyapoy ka ng parang inimaw pa'y pag-abot, na-shock ra gihapon siya ba, di ba? Ma-shock ra gihapon siya. When they attend funerals, the ceremony still provides a marker of the beginning of a new period of one's life as a survivor, and following are some of the religious practices regarding death. However, individual religious interpretations and practices may occur. So, we have 5 different religious practices here. First, we have Hindu, Judaism, Muslim, Roman Catholic. So, we have 4. Okay? So, first, we have Hindu. Sa Hindu belief in reincarnation accelerates the funeral ritual and deceit. Hindus are cremated as soon as possible. After being washed, the body is anointed, dressed, and then placed on a stand decorated with flowers ready to cremation. Once the body has been cremated, the ashes are collected and if possible, disappear in one of a Angel's Holy Rivers. So, sa Hindu. So, kanang Hindu is, isa na siya sa mga relihiyon sa India. So, kuwan siya. Nagabilib sila sa reincarnation. So, pagkahuman ani, di ba namin sila yung ritual. So, as soon as possible, dapat ang pasabot ani cremated is ginasunog nila ang bangkay. So, pag humag-wash, pag humag ka ng limpyuan ang patay, dapat i-kuan siya. I-kuan na jud siya. Ilisan, imo na siyang ibutang sa, i-place din mo siya, katabi tao siyang, kabantay mo anang, I don't think so, pero I think nakita naman na siya kanang, nasya kanang sunuganan, tapos nasya mga flower sa kilid, then, diri siya ibutang ang patay, o kanang, diri dagkutan ang kalay sa ubos, di ba? Kita mo ana, di ba? So, tapos pagkahuman ang uban is ginasaboy nila sa river ang ashes, di ba? Sismote lang belief, di ba? Na nagabilif sila sa reincarnation. So, ang uban pod is ginahimon lang souvenir, ginakollect nila ang ashes or ginabutang nila sa altar, di ba? So, we have the Judaism. Among the Orthodox, the deceased is first washed and then warped in a white simple shroud. Males are also wrapped in their prayer shawls. Once shrouded, the body is placed into a plain wooden coffin. The burial must occur as soon as possible after death, and a simple service consisting of prayers and eulogy is given. After burial, the family members is typically gather in one home event that one of the deceased are received visitors. There is referred to as sitting Shiva. So, lahi ipod sa Judaism. Kani siya, pares pagyapon sa Hindu nga, na sila'y kuan nagyapon, na sila'y pagkakatulad ba, pero naadud sila'y kalahian or differences. Ang Hindu ug ang Judaism is pares sila ginawash, di ba? Ang kalahian lang kani siya sa Hindu is ginacriminated as soon as possible. O diri pod sa kuan, o diri pod sa Judaism is ginaputo siya sa simple white. So, ang katong mga magkuan of prayers is mga males is also kanang nakaputos pod, di ba? Nakaputos pod. So, kani siya ginabutang, kato siya ginasunog ang Hindu. Ang kani siyang Judaism is ginabutang siya sa plain wooden coffin. So, kanang plain nga kahoy or plywood ba nga lungon, di ba? Tapos, as soon as possible, malubong dapat ang patayng lawas after death. As soon as possible, dapat ilubong yun siya. Tapos, nasa sila yung mga simple services. So, pag human sa lubong, ang pamilya o ang pamilya, mag-gather sila sa katong asagi namatay, katong balay sa namatyan. Mag-gather sila dito. Isa pa sila mo dawat og mga visitors, di ba? Lahi pud ang Judaism. So sa Muslim, in Islam, the deceased are buried is as soon as possible. So parehas lang silang tulo. Sa Muslim, Hindu, Judaism, Muslim, di ba? Dapat makuan jud siya as soon as possible as kana ang patay. Lahi ra jud sa ato sa Pilipino, di ba? So, requirements that the community be involved in the ritual. So, lahi pa sa Muslim, dapat apil po ang community sa ritual. The individuals is first washed and then wrapped in a plain plain white called a kafan. So, ang sa Judaism wala sila ginatawag to siya, naunsa to siya, ang ginaputos. Basta simple white. Dili po sa Muslim, ang tawag nila sa kanang white nga iputo sa patay is ginakold nila nga kafan. So, next, funeral prayers are said followed by the burial. So, prayer sa before ilubong, di ba? Prayer sa before ilubong ang patay. The shrouded dead are placed directly in the earth without a casket and deep enough to be disturbed. They are also positioned in the earth on their right side and facing Mecca and Saudi Arabia. So, ang Muslims sa Saudi Arabia, ginalubong nila ang ilahang patay is kinanglan ka ng lalong jud kayo siya nga walay kaset ba ni? Diba? Walay kaset. O kanang lalong jud kayo siya para dili jud madisturbo ang ilahang patay. Dili jud siya ma-disturbo. So, kanang ginakuan po nila, ginabutan po nila sa right side nga nagaatbang sa Mecca dito sa Saudi Arabia. So, muna to siya ang religious practice after that we have Hindu, Buddhism, Muslim. So, last we have the Roman Catholic. So, before that, an ill Catholic individual is anointed by a priest. So, before mamatay ang masakit dun is ginakuan jud pud siya sa pari, ginaampuan or ginamisahan siya. Mo nang kuan diri sa Pilipinas, di ba? Dagang mga Roman Catholic na siya. So, commonly referred to as anointing of the sick. Ginaampuan ang patay. Ang napay sakit. Bastos may mababa. The priest recites a prayer and applies consecrated oil to the forehead and hands of the ill person. Mo na ginaingon nila katong water, holy water. Ginapayid sa pare sa agtang ug sa kamot, di ba? Sama sa kiton nga tao kay kanang nagabilib ata ni sila sa miracle or tambal sa Ginoo, di ba? The individual also take a final communion consisting of consecrated bread and wine. So, kanang bread and wine, kanang bread is mean ang lawas ni Jesucristo. Ang wine mo iyahang dugo, di ba? The funeral rites consist of 3 parts. First is the wake, the usual occurs in the funeral parlor. So, the body is present and prayers and eulogies are offered by family and friends. Before siya ilubong or ikuan jud dito, ginaabrihan pa na siya para makita last kita nimo sa imuhang pamilya nga namatay, di ba? Or friends. Then, the funeral mass is next, which includes the opening prayer. So, naay opening prayer sa napanay mga pangadji ko sa Bisaya pa ang Roman Catholic. So, Bible readings, liturgy, communion, and a concluding rite. The funeral then moves to the cemetery where a blessing of the grave, scripture reading, and prayers conclude the funeral ritual. So, ang uban kasi sa balay lang siya ginaampuan. Pero ang uban, ginaagi pa sa simbahan. Ginaampuan po dito, o lahi, before siya idalon sa sementeryo, o dito sa siya ampuan. So, daghan kayo puan ang Roman Catholic. So, ang Judaism, Hindu, and Muslim, ginakuan jud nila, ginalubong or criminated jud nila dahil ilang patay. Lahi diri sa Roman Catholic nga, ginabigilan diri ba? Roman Catholic, ginabigilan pa siya. Describe the new practice of green burials. So, green burials, in 2017, the median of cost of an adult funeral with viewing the burial was $87,775 US. The median cost for viewing the cremation was $6,260 US, or National Funeral Directors Association for the short NFDA 2019. So the same NFD survey found that the nearly half of all same NFDA survey found that the nearly half of all respondent has attend a funeral in a non-traditional setting such as an outdoor settings that was meaningful to the deceased. So, di ba, kuan jud siya kani ang green burial. So, traditional settings such as an outdoor settings that was meaningful to the deceased. And other half of the respondents said they would be interested in exploring green funeral options by NFDA 2017. So according to the Green Burials Council or GBC 2019, Americans bury over 64,000 tons of steel and 17,000 tons of copper and bronze, 1.6 million tons of concrete, 20 million feet of wood and over 4 million gallons of embalming fluid every year. Wow! So kaning green burial sa site sa UK is mo na siya ang ginalubong sa ilalom, di ba? Na siya mga 4 million gallons of embalming fluid every year. As a result, there has been a growing interest in green of natural burials. So green burials attempt to reduce the impact on the environment at every stage of funeral. So this can include using recycled paper, biodegradable casket, cotton shroud in the place of any casket, formal, free, or no embalming, and trying to maintain the natural environment around the burial site, or GBC 2019. According to the NFDA 2017, many cemeteries have reported that the consumers are requesting green burials options, and since many of the add-ons of a traditional burial, such as concrete vault, embalming, and casket are not required, the cost can be sustainably less. So now I'm going to differentiate among grief, bereavement, and mourning. So grief. The terms of grief, bereavement, and mourning are often used interchangeable, di ba? However, they have different meaning. So pare-pareha na daw sila pero na sila different meaning. So ang grief is a normal process of reacting to a loss. So kaning for example, namatyan ka karon. So mag-grief ka natural lang jud imong ma-feel or imong hang reaction. So grief can be in response to physical loss such as death or social loss including a relationship or job. So kaning grief dili lang pud tungod kay namatyan ka, mag-grief na pud ka. Ma-feel pud nimo siya if sa relationship or kanang matanggal ka sa job or family problem or sa mabulagan ka og uyab, di ba? So bereavement is the period after a loss during which grief and mourning occurs, di ba? The time spent in bereavement for the loss of a loved ones depends on the circumstances of the loss and the level of attachment to the person who died. So kani siya is pare-pareho lang gyapon sila sa grief. So kuan lang ni siya kanang bereavement is period after a loss during which grief and a mourning occurs. So depende po siya kung unsa imong for example, imong igagaw namatay, nakadepende po siya sa level sa attachment for the loss of a loved ones depends loved ones who died. So mourning is the process by which people adapt to a loss. Mourning is greatly influenced by culture, beliefs, practices, and rituals. So kaning mourning dili na nimo ma-feel ang acceptance stage after nalubong na siya after a year, di ba? Mo ni siya ang imong ma-feel. Magluksa ra gyapon ka pero imo na siyang gina-practice na nimo siya sa imong self. Nanak sa acceptance stage diri sa mourning. So, grief reaction is typically grief reaction involve mental, physical, social, and or emotional responses. So, na siya ma-feel mo mental, physical, di ba? This reaction can include feelings, numbness, anger, guilt, anxiety, sadness, and despair. The individual can experience difficulty concentrating, sleep, and eating problems, loss of interest in pleasurable activities and physical problems, and even illness. research has demonstrated that immune system of individuals grieving is suppressed and their healthy cells behave more, resulting in greater susceptibility to illness. Parks and Ferguson, 2010. However, the intensity and duration of typical grief symptoms do not match those usually seen. Serve grief reaction and symptoms typically diminish within 16 weeks by Udin 2016. So kani siya, kani mo mga ma-feel mo, kani ang mag-discuss na ta sa mga klase-klaseng grief reaction. First, we have complicated grief. So, di ba? Complicated grief. After the loss of a loved one, however, some individual experience complicated grief. So, maglisod. Maglisod jud siya ug dawat, di ba? Magluksa jud siya kusog. Which includes a typical grief reaction. Nesson, Bolen, Heck, Hoffman, and Timir, 2011. So these symptoms of complicated grief include feelings or disbelief or preoccupation with the dead loved. So dili jud niya tuhuan ba nga? Dili ko katuo nga wala na siya. Mo na siya ang kuan, complicated grief. Mo ay mo ma-feel na wala namatay na ba si kuan, tas dili jud ka katuo ba? Dili jud nimo siya madawat. Distressful memories. Kanang kuan jud mo yang memories dai. Ma-recap sa imong mind ang memories. Mo siya ang complicated grief. So, feeling unavailable to move on with one's life and a yearning for the deceased. So, lisod jud kaayo nimo siya madawat miskan kuan na tuig na siya na nawala. Digyapon ka mo tuo nga wala na siya. Di ba? Additionally, these symptoms may last 6 months or longer and mirror those seen a major depressive disorder, Udin 2016. So, kani siya, kung kaning complicated grief, kanimong pagluluksa, maabot na ni siya 6 or more, di ba? Mahulog na ni siya nga depressive disorder. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, 5th ed. American Psychiatric Association 2013, between major depressive disorder and complicated grief requires clinical judgment. The psychologist needs to evaluate the client's individually history and determine whether the symptoms are focused entirely on the loss of the loved one and present the individual's cultural norms of grieving which would be acceptable. Those who seek assistance for complicated grief usually have experienced traumatic forms of bereavement such as unexpected, multiple, and violent deaths or those due to murders or suicide. So, nadjud ni siya no sa complicated grief. Kanang kuan mga violent deaths like gipatay, gipusil, gikulata, or kaning mga kuan kanang mo ni siya mga gimurders or suicide, dili jud madawat ba, di ba? So number 2, we're going to kanang mo ni siya, isa pud ni siya sa kuan grief reactions. Disenfranchised grief. Grief that is not socially recognized is referred to as disenfranchised grief by Doka 1989. Examples of disenfranchised grief is included due to AIDS, the suicide of the loved one, prenatal deaths, abortions, and the death of a pet, a lover, or a ex-spouse. The ex-spouse. This type of disenfranchised grief reaction is and psychological losses, and such as partner developing Alzheimer's disease. Due to the type of loss, there is no formal mourning practices or recognition by others that would comfort the grieving individual. Consequently, individuals experiencing disenfranchised grief may suffer intensified symptoms due to lack of social support. So dili ra kay siya lahi ra jud siya sa complicated grief. So we have the third one, grief reaction is anticipatory grief. Grief that occurs when a death is expected and survivors have time to prepare to some extent before the loss of referred to as anticipatory grief. This expectation can make adjustment after a loss somewhat easier. Kubler-Ross and Kistler 2005. Death after long-term painful illness may bring family members a sense of relief that the suffering is over. The existing process of caring for someone who is ill is also completed. So, mo ni siya, anticipatory. Dili na bilaw ka itong mga kabalo na jud sila nga mamatay na jud kanang, for example, kanang mga naisakit, naitaning, kanang kabalo na jud sila or kanang na-inform na jud sila nga mao na jud dira na jud siya mahitabo. Dili na sila ma-shock. Lahi sa complicated grief, di ba? So, now I'm going to discuss or describe the models of grief. So, there are several theoretical models of grief. However, none is all-encompassing. Udin 2016. These models are merely guidelines for what an individual may experience while grieving. However, if individuals do not fit a model, it does not mean there is something wrong with the way they experience grief. So, it is important to remember that there is no one way to grieve and people move through a variety of stages of grief in various ways. So, first we have, the first model, we have 5 stages of grief. So, naay mga stages ang grief. Kanang, describe 5 stages of loss experienced by someone who faced the newest of their impending death. These stages are not real stages that a person goes through in order or only once, nor only they stages that occur with the same intensity, and that the process of death is influenced by a person's life experience. Says the timing of their death is relations to life events, the predictability of their death based on health or illness, their belief system, and their assessment of quality of their own life. Nevertheless, these stages help us to understand and recognize some of what a dying person experiences psychologically, and by understanding, we are more equipped to support the person as they die. So first, we have denial. Di ba, from the words deny, di ba? Deny nila ilang pagluksa, denial is often the first reaction to overwhelming, unimaginable news, denial or disbelief or shock, di ba? Naga-shock sila or ginadeny nila nga. Hala, dili jud ko kato, ba ginadeny jud nila ba sa ilang self or nasa-shock jud sila. Protect us by allowing such news to enter slowly and to give us time to come to grips with what is taking place. The person who received positive test result for life-threatening condition may question the result, seek second opinions rather, or may feel a sense of disbelief, psychological, even though they know that the result are true. Diba? Ginadinay ragyapon nila kung kabalo naman sila nga tinuod jud. Diba? The result are true, are positive. So second, we have anger. Also provides us with the protection in that being energized to us to fight against something and give structure to situation that may be trusting into us, the unknown. It is much easier to be angry than to be sad, in pain, or depressed. It helps us to temporarily believe that we have a sense of control over our future and to feel that we have at least experienced a rage about how unfair life can be, di ba? Okay lang masuko. Imong pagluksa, okay lang ipagi sa kasuko, di ba? Di ba? Wala na siya problema. Kung paunsa nimo, kung ma-explain nimo paunsa ang life, how unfair life can be. Anger can be focused on a person, a healthcare provider, at a god, at the world in general. So, imo kasuko. So, kung mamatay mo ang pamilya, so naadyo kay kasukan imong sisiyon nga, God, ngano man to, ngano man ni, ngano man na siya, di ba? Danan kay kag question or masuko ka sa doctor's care or sa health provider's care. Imo silang ginasisi kay wala lang gibuhat ang tanan, di ba? Ipaagi nimo sa kasuko ang tanan. So, or sa God, di ba, pawatanon nimo or masuko ka sa tibok kalibutan ngano pa man siya, ngano pa man kami, di ba? It can be expressed over issue that have nothing to do with our death, di ba? Consequently, being in this stage of loss is not always obvious na. Kani siya, dili pud siya permanently obvious. So, imong kasuko, dili pud kay siya obvious. So, we have number 3, bargaining, rather. Involves trying to think of what could be done to turn the situation around. Living better, devoting self to a cause, being a better friend, parent, or spouse, are all agreement what one might willingly commit to if doing so would lengthen life. Asking to just live long enough to witness a family event or finish a task are example of bargaining. So number 3, we have depression. So isa pud ni siya, ma-depress pud jud ka. Or sadness is appropriate for such an event, feeling the full weight of loss, so crying and losing interest in the outside world. It is an important part of process of dying. So this depression make others feel very uncomfortable and family members may try to console their loved ones. Someone hospice care can include the use of antidepressants to reduce depression during this stage. So, bilang pud ni ang depression sa 5 stage of grief. Kanang pagluluksa nimo. So, moagi pud ka og pagka-depress. Acceptance. So, mo na siya akong ginaingon ganina. Ang grief, under niya ang acceptance. So, it involves learning how to carry on and to incorporate this aspect of the lifespan into daily existence. Reaching acceptance does not in any way imply that people who are dying are happy about it or content with it. It means that they are facing it and continue to make arrangements and to say what they wish to say to others. Some terminally ill people find that they live life more fully than ever before and after they come to this stage. So, acceptance. Dapat, na jud mo. Ma-practice na jud mo imong kaugalingon nga, mumata ka nga, wala na jud siya. Nana jud ka sa acceptance the stage. Kung ato pang naka-move on, mag-move on, dapat mag-accept na ka. According to Kubler-Ross, 1969, behind these 5 stages, focus on the identified emotions, there is sense of hope.
So now I'm going to discuss also one of the model of the grief is criticism of Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief. So some researchers have been skeptical of the validity of there being stages of a grief among the dying by Friedman and James 2008. As Kubler-Ross noted in her own work, it is difficult to empirically test the experiences of the dying. So how do you do the research on dying? And when you cannot verify your data and cannot set up experiments, according to Kubler-Ross 1969. So she and 4 students from the Chicago Theology Seminary in 1965 decided to listen to the experiences of dying patients, but her ideas about about death and dying are based on the interviews, collective feelings about what dying were experiencing and needed, according Kubler-Ross 1969. So, atong 1965, so she and her four students, so nag-experiment sila. So, ilang gibuhat is nang naminaw sila sa mga decision or sa mga feelings or nagakolek sila katong mga kamatyonon na. So, mo ilahang ibutang sa ilahang gi-research. So, while she goes on to say, in support of her approach, that she and her students read nothing about the prior literature on death and dying, so as to have no preconceived ideas. A later work revealed that her own experience of grief from childhood undoubtedly doubtedly color her perceptions of the grieving process, according to Kubler-Ross and Chrysler 2005. So, Kubler-Ross a is in her theory that the one stage that all those who are ready I mean on stage one stage that all those who are dying go through is anger. It is clear from her 2005 book that anger played a central role in her grief and did so for many years, by Friedman and James 2008. So there have been challenges to the notion that denial and acceptance are beneficial to the grieving process. According to Telford, Kralik, and Crouch 2006, denial can become a barrier between the patient and the healthcare specialist and reduce the ability to educate and treat the patients similarly. Acceptance of a terminal diagnosis may also lead patients to give up and forego treatments to alleviate their symptoms. In fact, some research suggests that optimism about one's prognosis may help in one's adjustment and increase longevity, by Taylor, Kemeny, Reed, Bower, and Grunewald 2000. So, we also have dual process model of grieving. The dual process model takes into consideration that bereaved individuals move back and forth between grieving and preparing for life without their loved one. According to Strube and Scott 2001, Scroobe Scout and Scroobe 2005. This model focuses on loss orientation, which emphasizes the feeling of loss and yearning for the deceased, and restoration orientation, which center of the grieving individual reestablishing rules and activities they had prior to the death of their loved one. So, when oriented toward loss grieving, and individuals look back, and when oriented toward restoration, they look forward, as one cannot look back and forward at the same time. Inverted person must shift back and forth between the two. Both orientations facilitate normal grieving and interact until bereavement has completed. Grief, loss of a children and parents. So, loss of a child, according to Parks and Pridgerson 2010, the loss of a child at any age is considered the most distressing and long-lasting of all griefs. So, bereaved parents suffer an increased risk to both physical and mental health and exhibit an increased mortality rate. Additionally, they earn higher scores or inventories of grief compared to other types of bereavement. Of those recently diagnosed with depression, a high percentage have had experienced the death of a child within the preceding 6 months, and 8% of women who lost child had died, attempt, or committed suicide. Archer 1999 found that the intensity of grief increased with the child's age until the age of 17. So when it declined, Archer explained that the women have a greater chance of having another child when younger, and thus with added age come greater grief as fertility declines. Certainly, the older the child, the more the mother has bonded with the child and will experience greater grief. So even when children are adults, parents may experience intense grief, especially when the death is sudden. Adult children dying in traffic accident was associated with parents experiencing more intense grief and this depression, greater symptoms on a health checklist, and more guilt than those parents whose adult children died from cancer, according to Parks and Pridgerson 2010. Additionally, the death of unmarried adult children still residing at home and those who experience alcohol and childhood deaths are statistically infrequent. Parents are often unprepared for the loss of their daughter or son and suffer high levels of grief. Loss of parents in adulthood. So in contrast, the loss of a child, the loss of parents in adult life is much more common and result in less suffering. In their literature review, Moss and Moss 1995 found that the loss of a parent in adult life is rarely pathological. So those adult children who appear to the most difficultly dealing with the loss of a parent are adult men who remain unmarried and continue to live with their mothers. So, in contrast, those who are in satisfying marriage are less likely to require grief assistance, according to Parks and Pridgerson 2010. To determine the effects of gender on parental death. Mark's June survey, Mark's June and Song 2007 analyzed longitudinal data from National Survey of Families and Households that assess multiple dimensions of psychological well-being in adults, including depression, happiness, self-esteem, mastery, psychological wellness, alcohol abuse, and physical health. Findings indicated that a father's death lead to more negative effects for sons than daughters, and a mother's death lead to more negative effects for daughters. So, loss of a parents in childhood. So, parental deaths in childhood have been associated with adjustment problems that may last into adulthood. Elise Downrick and Lloyd Williams, 2013, identified several negative outcomes associated with childhood grief, including increased chance of substances abuse, greater susceptibility to depressions, higher chance of criminal behavior, school underachievement, and lower employees rates. Typically, professional help is not required in helping children and teens who are dealing with death of a loved one. So, however, a 2002 identified 10 red flags. So, displayed by grieving children that may indicate the need for professionals' assistance. So, first, we have persistence, difficulty in talking about the dead person. Second, we have persistent or destructive aggressive behavior. Third one, we have persisting anxiety, clinging, or fears. So, we have fourth, somatic complaints or stomach aches or headaches stomach aches and headaches. So, sleeping difficulties, eating disturbance, marked social withdrawal, school difficulties, or serious academic reversal, persistent self-blame or guilt, self-destructive behavior. So, as a parent, may also be dealing with
funeral arrangement, and other end-of-life matters. They may not always have the time to address questions and concerns that children may have. When explaining death to children, it is important to use real words, use real words such as dead and death. According to Dresser and Wisserman, 2010, children do not understand the meanings of such phrases as pass away, left us, and or lost, and they can become confused as to what happened. Slaying a loved one died of a disease called cancer. It's preferable to saying he was very sick. The child may become worried when others become sick that they too will die. Consequently, it is important that the children have someone who will listen to and accurately address their concern. Mourning. As a society, are we given the tools and time to adequately mourn? Or not all researchers agree that we do. The death-denying, grief-dismissing world. So, is the modern world, according to Kubler-Ross and Kistler 2005, we often grieve privately, quickly, and medicate our suffering with substance or activities. So, employers grant 3 to 5 days for bereavement. If the loss is that of an immediate family member, and such leaves are sometimes limited to no more than one per year. So yet, grief takes much longer, and bereaved as are seldom ready to perform well on the job. After just a few days, obviously, life does have to continue, but we need to acknowledge and make more caring accommodations for those who are in grief. So, this is the 4 tasks of mourning, according to Warden 2008. Identify 4 tasks that facilitate the mourning process. Warden believes that all 4 tasks must be completed, but they may be but they may be complete in any order and for varying amounts of time. These tasks include: first, we have accept that the loss have occurred. Second, we have working through the pain of grief. Third, we have adjusting to life without the deceased. And last one, we have the starting a new life while still maintaining a connection with the deceased. So, last, we have support groups. Support groups are helpful for grieving individuals of all ages, including those who are sick, terminal caregiving, or mourning the loss of a loved one. Support group reduce isolation, connect individuals with others who have similar experience. So, and offer those grieving a place to share their pain and learn new ways of coping. According to Harold and Lynn 2011, support groups are available through religious organizations, hospitals, hospice, nursing homes, mental health facilities, and schools for children. So, viewing that as an integral part of the lifespan will benefit those who are ill, those who are bereaved, and all of us as a friend, caregivers, partners, family members, and human and global society.